The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Darren Paskey. I'm the Supportive Employment Program Manager with the Healthcare Authority with Washington State. I focus on providing technical assistance, education, independent IPS services, fidelity reviews across the state. Today, we originally had scheduled an overview of Senior Community Service Employment Program by Jim Kenny. Unfortunately, he canceled the presentation today, so we have changed the presentation and we now are presenting Changing Careers in the Middle of Upheaval by Don Miller. Don is also a staff member with the Healthcare Authority. He's a Supportive Employment Program Manager with a focus on services in Eastern Washington. I do apologize for this last minute change in presentations, but I hope you're all able to log in and stay with us for this presentation. Dawn Miller is a passionate advocate for behavioral health and recovery. Her experience includes supervising supportive employment program in a community mental health center for over 21 years, as part of which implementing Becoming Employed Starts Today, an individual placement and support program site. The BEST program was funded through a Transforming Lives Through Supportive Employment grant from SAMHSA. Prior to her experience in serving people with behavioral health challenges, she worked in a vocational and residential program providing services to people with a wide range of challenges. She has fought to decrease stigma and to increase the focus of looking at people for their abilities and not their labels. She is currently working for the state of Washington as a Supportive Employment Program Manager, IPS trainer, a position which allows her to train and mentor agencies to provide IPS supportive employment services and in the process, extend the message of looking at people for their abilities. Welcome, Dawn, and thank you for jumping in and providing this presentation today. Again, I do apologize for the last minute change from the original title from Senior Community Service Employment Program Overview to our presentation today, Changing Careers in the Middle of Upheaval. Thank you all for attending today, and thank you, Don, for presenting for us. I'll hand it
You're
over
most welcome.
to you.
Thanks, Darren. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. And I hope you find the presentation today helpful. It was a presentation that I gave at a conference a year or two ago. Frankly, can't remember which one. And it was well met at that point in time. So hopefully you will find it beneficial too. And let's see if I can get the slide to advance. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to consider whether it's going to actually behave and do what I wanted it to do. I know we all live through the challenges of technology at this point in time, and this is just one small example of that. There we go. And so the goals of the training today are to identify why we change careers, defining upheaval, discussing tips for obtaining the job of your choice, discussing how to remain employed with a current employer, or maybe change duties, and other information. And kind of if you have things that you want to hear, feel free to type them in the chat box. This is intended to be for people that we serve, but it could be relevant to you as well as a staff person in a program dealing with employment. And so I hope you'll let me know if there are other things that you would like to hear, but those are the goals of the presentation today. So some of the reasons that we, yes.
Did you want me to present the screen or are you going to present?
Does it not show?
I don't see it, no.
Thank you for the heads up. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. We're off and running. Yeah, more technology.
Yes.
So some of the reasons we changed careers. Recently with COVID, and when we're talking upheaval, heaven knows COVID is huge upheaval. And there have been lots of layoffs or companies closed. I know it's affected just a huge number of people on caseloads. When I talk to agencies, they discuss the number of people that had jobs that don't, or they had a job and maybe they're going to go back later, but they don't know when that later is, given our kind of shifting back and forth through phases. Another reason would be current job is no longer a good fit. When I had a caseload, very often that related to people having changes in health, changes in kind of their physical status. So maybe they weren't able to do the job they did once upon a time, and aging, very honestly. I used to talk to folks on my caseload that were middle-aged about the idea of considering a career that would be something they could sustain through retirement. It's 2020 explains it all. So evidently this was last year's presentation because 2020 explains it all. Child cares were closed. People were quarantined and furloughed and had reductions in hours. All kinds of things that happened that I don't think any of us ever would have anticipated prior to COVID. And then guess what? There they are. Seeking advancement, always a great reason for changing careers. Sometimes we don't feel that our skills are being used to their full potential and we need to stretch a little more. Sometimes we need more money. I think a lot of the time when people change jobs, it's because the one for which they're applying is going to be paying more money. And then need to accommodate changes in life circumstances. Lots of people, when they marry and maybe they move someplace else, or the spouse had a career change that takes them to a different city, or I mean, kind of you name it. There's lots and lots of changes in life circumstances that cause us to change careers. And I'm sure you can come up with a variety of other reasons, maybe ones that you've gone through, that make you consider changing your career, and certainly make the people that we serve consider changing a career. Okay, so we so very often work with people who've lost a job, and now what do they do? We talk in job development related to how to talk to employers and that kind of thing, but I'm not sure. I think once upon a time I wasn't as clear with people on my caseload what they could do in the interim while they were looking for a job. So obviously using all available resources, unemployment, if folks qualify, that should be kind of a first line of defense for at least some of the folks that don't have benefits still. Work source for job search and connecting with the staff there. Every work source is intended to have a disability specialist, someone who specifically helps people with disabilities in their job search. You should know that person and get connected with them. Hopefully lots of the folks that have lost their jobs that have disabilities qualify for foundational community supported employment. And in some cases, people may qualify for COVID-19 disaster relief. I am not the expert related to what the qualifications are. That would be something that folks would need to look up. I always encourage people when you're looking for a job, when somebody on your caseload is looking for a job, activate your network. The people that care about you will help you search. They will introduce you to folks that are in a position to hire, are in a position to be able to tell you about jobs in the place where they work, or to at least put in a good word for you. Employers, and rightfully so, are far more comfortable accepting someone in a position if they've been referred by someone else, if they're a known entity. And you got to think, if you're the hiring manager and one of your trusted staff says, yeah, this person is great, isn't that going to be more attractive than somebody that just walks in off the street? So let everybody that is close to you know that you're looking for a job. Have them help you try and come up with ideas, and then put in a good word for you. And make sure for yourself or for the folks that you're working with that they've always asked for a letter of recommendation from prior supervisors. And then take stock of your finances. I know one of the things that I've talked to with some people that had been working and fairly comfortable and then were not was Sometimes we have to consider selling some of our belongings and things. Never the first choice, but definitely is a choice that I think sometimes people don't consider. So tips for finding that next job and things that we should encourage the people on our caseloads. Survey your transferable skills. So it may not be specific skills related to the actual job. If you're a lineman with a power company, you know, those are some very specific skills. But the being on time and getting along with others, and in that case, good physical abilities and those kinds of things are transferable to other kinds of jobs, most definitely. I know that people that we work with very often have a hard time tooting their own horn because they've been told so very often, you can't, you can't, you can't, you won't kind of a thing. But help them to make a list of accomplishments. Help them to make a list of their strengths. We are strengths based in the services that we provide, and so that should be a primary thing that we do with folks, is to help them to come up with a list of their strengths and recognize that some of them just may not be able to do it, and we need to provide that coaching in order to help. Brush up the resume, ask somebody to proofread it. Anytime I've looked for a job, and obviously, you know, as Darren introduced me and said I was at my last job for 21 years, didn't have to do a whole lot of resumes during that period of time. But any time that I have done, I make sure that someone else looks at the resume. Because very often we can read a line and think that it reads just fine, and somebody else reads it and says, oh gosh, you left out a word, or, you know, this doesn't make sense, or whatever it might be. So always have somebody proofread. And when you do a resume for a person, it doesn't hurt to have them take it home and have their family members proofread it and see if they can help to add some of their accomplishments and things. Consider whether the next step requires a college degree or some other kind of training. I think some individuals at some agencies are great about talking to the folks on their caseloads about the idea that, you know, if your long-term goal is to be an astronaut, you're going to have some training for that. Where do you go get the training, and what are some steps towards that? And also then at the same time talking about short-term and long-term goals. We all have to have a roof over our head, or at least we hope to. And so we have to have that survivor job at the very least in order to be able to go to college or work at some kind of job that's maybe not our ultimate, but will be the one that gets us to our ultimate. Consider temp to permanent options. I live in Moses Lake, I work in Moses Lake, lots of agriculture here, and there are even a town kind of as small as Moses Lake, where like 22,000 people, has 5 different temp agencies, because the different food processing plants and lots of the employers in town use them to do their ultimately permanent hiring. They have them do the process of interviewing and checking backgrounds and things along that line, and hire them on under the guise of a temp agency initially, and then if the employer likes them, they make it permanent. Leverage your network, and by that I mean, if you have a direction you want to go and you know somebody that already has a job kind of in that area, make a point of taking them out to lunch and talking to them. Make a point of seeing what they have to say related to openings in companies that they know of. Excuse me. And then practice good self-care. And we should encourage that of the folks on our caseloads too. We know that job search is not an uplifting experience. How many, you know, denials do you get before you get that one acceptance of, you know, we're going to hire you for this or that job. And in order to weather the storm, self-care is so important. It doesn't have to be stuff that's expensive. And I know when I've talked to folks on my caseload, they've said, well, I don't have any money to do X, Y, or Z. It's like, anytime I looked on the internet in towns when I've been traveling, when I was doing my work and traveling, I would look up things that are cheap or free in whatever area it might be. And there's always boatloads. There's parks to go to where you can take a walk. There's museums in some cases that are cheap or free. There's libraries where they have different activities. There's all kinds of things. Good self-care could be taking a bubble bath, or I happen to have a colleague who might have watched the moon set and drink a glass of wine while he was doing that last night. So good self-care can be a variety of things. Let's see. So best ways to find a job. I know when we talk about individual placement and support, you probably have heard 3 cups of tea and all that kind of thing. This is kind of broader than that. Excuse me. I apologize. Allergies acting up this morning. This is sort of broader than that. I don't know about any of you, but I do know that in my case, over half of the jobs that I've gotten in my life were because of my network, were because somebody said, you should apply for this job, I'll put in a good word for you. Or in a couple of cases, the person who was going to be my supervisor knew me and encouraged me to apply. The job that I had for 21 years was one of those. I was asked to apply for the job, and I did, and obviously that worked. Similar thing at the Healthcare Authority in DBHR. I was encouraged to apply for the job. And so ask your network for referrals, and recognize that they may come to you with ideas about jobs they think would be good for you. And you can do the same thing. You can help people do the same thing on your caseload. Boy, I'm gonna get in trouble with some people's supervisors forever suggesting that this could be about you, but it could, but also definitely about the people on your caseload. Use the job search platforms. I know you all do that at this point in time, and in fact, because of COVID, that's one of the things that's available to you, depending upon kind of what phase you're in. I know the state went to phase 3, and now 3 counties have gone back down to phase 2. And you get sort of stuck using those job search platforms. There have been, in the past year, an increase of virtual job fairs. They had one, in fact, in Moses Lake last month that they did virtually, and I think they're becoming better. They're being more well done than they were over time. They're getting practice at it, and they're certainly becoming more widespread. And so for those folks on our caseload that don't have tech experience, hopefully you're working with them all the way along in order to increase their ability to access technology to do what they need to do. I know there are a lot of them that simply don't have the technology. They don't have the computers. They don't have the tablets. They may have a smartphone if they're lucky. I will tell you that the HCA, DBHR, once again, HCA actually, I'm just going to put it that way, has been researching getting cell phones and some tablets. That will be ready to roll out pretty soon, if I'm remembering right. And so be watching for that. They're going to be delivering them through the Affordable Communities of Health, the ACHs. And that's up and coming. And it's going to be based on a per capita kind of thing. So the largest ACHs are going to get the most of them, and it's a strict percentage. If this ACH has X percent of individuals receiving IPS and supportive housing services in the state, then that's the number of phones and tablets they get. So be watching for that. It's coming up. Leverage social media. I don't know how many of you have worked with folks to have LinkedIn accounts or accounts that they save just for business purposes, not the Facebook, posting whatever, maybe things that are a little less appropriate. And speaking of that, when people do job search, it is wise to talk to them about their Facebook account and making certain that it is generally appropriate, because there are lots of employers that check that. There are lots of employers that look to see kind of what your stand is on Facebook in order to determine if you're a good fit for them. I had a young man that I worked with, I should say, a number of years ago, who was a transitioning high school student. And his Facebook profile was him, and this is prior to marijuana being legal, him holding a marijuana plant and an automatic gun of some sort. I'm here to tell you, any employer that saw that would probably think twice about him. And that's an extreme circumstance, but sometimes folks have extreme circumstances. So that's something just to keep kind of in the back of your mind as you're working with people. Excuse me. Inquire at staffing agencies. That gets back to that temp to permanent kind of thing. Don't count them out as options for people. Sometimes we have folks on our caseloads who perhaps their resume shows that they've managed to stay at a job 2 or 3 months at a time. Maybe a temp job is their temp agency is the perfect thing for them. You know, that's something. This is a think outside of the box. You know, if a person is desperate for a job, you kind of do what you need to do. But at any time, think outside of the box and determine what things might work. When I talk to people about networking, I talk about things like maybe joining Toastmasters, and some of those kinds of things will even have scholarships for people that don't have the money to be able to pay to be a piece of it. Ask to be on an advisory board or apply to be on an advisory board. I've had people on my caseload a couple of times in the past that did just exactly that, and it's a great networking opportunity, and networking with people that would be, you know, in the type of work that they might be interested in doing. Do research. Definitely do research. When you join professional organizations, do your research and just get to know about what's out there, because that can be an opportunity, even if you don't join an organization, to get to know people or to attend some of their presentations or become a known entity kind of in other ways. Looks like we might be having audio difficulty for what I'm seeing on my screen. I hope everybody can still hear me. And then, though IPS says not to typically make volunteer jobs the first opportunity, that doesn't mean that a person can't volunteer on their own if it's going to lead to a job. Not volunteer for volunteer's sake, but volunteer because they want to network and because it's in a company that they want to work at ultimately. That's not typically something that, as an employment specialist, you would help them with. Somebody who's a housing case manager might. Somebody who's a case manager in a behavioral health organization might. But the focus of IPS is paid work, and so that's where we spend our time. That doesn't mean that on occasion folks wouldn't end up volunteering just because it will help to expand their network. Hope that makes sense and isn't too confusing. Have people maintain contact with prior employers and coworkers with whom they got along. There have been various times I've had people on my caseload that got in touch with a prior coworker or employer that was very interested in hiring them back on again. Or they had new opportunities, or they were willing to put in a good word for them aside from a letter of recommendation. Find a mentor. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do as we work is to find a mentor. I don't know about you, but I continue learning every day. I continue ending up with having new information that I didn't have before on just a regular basis. And having a mentor, somebody that you really respect that has skills maybe at a higher level than you do. The person that you always say, I want to be them when I grow up, that's the person that should be your mentor. Find a mentor at the work that you want to be in, perhaps at the work that you're at. Encourage the people that are on your caseload to do that. I see Rodnisha says, are you going to get a copy of the presentation? Yes, absolutely. I was just looking to see if we had questions, and that was the one that I saw. And networking is a two-way street. So you're asking for something when you network. You're asking for a recommendation or some mentoring or something. And so it should be reciprocal. There should be something that you should be able to offer as well. Very important to consider it a two-way street and not just I'm getting, but what am I giving? I know within the work that I've done, and when I do job development, I pay attention to what folks are saying as far as their challenges are, and sometimes I will do a little research. Let's say they bring up a topic that is one that I'm generally familiar with, but not fully familiar with, I'll research and I'll say, hey, I found this great article I wanted to share with you. Be known as that powerful resource. Be known as somebody who will go the extra mile to try and help people out to do what they need to do, in addition to the fact that they're helping you. And be genuine and sincere. I mean, I'm sure that's exactly what everybody's doing, but it doesn't hurt to bring it up. Building those positive relationships with people, trying to remember to be pleasant, even in times of COVID, when we'd rather not be on occasion. Those are all things that are so important in the networking, and something that I just highlight here because I'll speak to my own self. I know I joke with Darren, my colleague, about the fact that he's a nicer person than I am. He reminds me to not get crabby just by watching him do what he does. Whoops. Well, that was interesting. Let's see if we can get this back down to the size that it was supposed to be and on to the next slide. Sadly, my computer has decided it does not want to advance in any way, shape, or form, and so what I've been having to do is I have a touch screen and try and do it that way, and now it's larger and won't get smaller. There we go. Let's try one more time. So, how many folks have you worked with when you ask them what they want to do? They say, I don't know. I can tell you that right this very moment, I have a grandson who's 18 years old, and I've been asking him a lot, what do you want to do? And he says, I don't know. There are, once again, IPS is not big about doing a bunch of lengthy assessments, but there are some assessments out there that are short-term and essentially self-assessments that people can do. I get to tell my favorite story. And a gal in my caseload who was actively using meth, was a prostitute and a drug dealer. The first time she came in, she was definitely actively using. She sort of hovered over her chair for about 15 minutes and then bolted out the door and said, I'm done. And I kind of chased her down the hall in order to get another appointment scheduled. The next time I saw her, similar kind of thing. About the third time I saw her, she said, I'm really tired of what I'm doing. I've been mugged so many times. I have PTSD. I want to do something legal. My family's essentially disowned me. And I said, what do you want to do? She said, I don't know. We went on the Career One Stop, and there are interest surveys that take about 15 minutes. There are work importance locators that kind of help you to decide, when I get to a job, is it important to me to be autonomous? Is it important to have a lot of close supervision? What's important? And so we went through those assessments, and what came up was that she wanted to be a welder. And this is one where zero exclusion was also at play. She had pretty makeup, pretty clothes. I'm thinking welder. Wow, I just don't see that. But I didn't say a word because that wasn't my place. Helped her to get into college, helped her to do FAFSA, helped her to, with her PTSD, talk to her instructor and to the disabled student liaison. Got accommodations so that she got to quit a little early, because welding carousels are open to the back. It's a 3-sided thing and you're in it welding, and it's open to the back. And if people were milling it around behind her, that triggered her in a big way. And so we got that accommodation where she got to leave a little early. She got to clean up and leave a little early. Always got to sit in the back of the class. Took her 2 years to get a 1-year certificate. That's okay. She got a job in a scrapyard using a cutting torch. She got a flash burn once. She got, the flying little pieces of metal and some scars and things. Didn't phase her in the least. She liked the guys there. They flipped her a bunch of stuff and she flipped it right back. And her adult children looked her up, and she started having a relationship with her mom again. It was storybook ending wonderful stuff. That all started with a 15-minute interest survey on Career One Stop. So if a person doesn't know what they want to do, if you don't know what you want to do, there's ways to figure it out. If you look labor market info on the WorkSource website, sometimes it takes, a person says, I want to be a barista, and you say, okay, let's look up and see what it says they have to be able to do. Do you have those skills? Well, yeah, I do. Great. Do you have those skills? No, I don't. Well, let's look at some others. Have them have a heart-to-heart with somebody that cares about them, or have you have a heart-to-heart with somebody that cares about you, and just ask them, what do you think I'd be good at? Sometimes folks have insights from knowing you over the years that maybe you've forgotten. I will sometimes ask people when I had a caseload, what did you want to do as a kid? What was important to you then? Oddly enough, when I was a kid, I decided I wanted to be a nurse, and I don't like blood and guts and stuff, so I became a social worker and have been all my life. And then, I ask people, and you should ask yourself, what's my dream job? Now might be the time, or at the very least, it's the time to start taking baby steps towards that. So sometimes the people with whom we work are in a job and they're unhappy. Does that mean they have to quit? Not necessarily. Sometimes you are in a job that is not the greatest fit. Is career advancement an opportunity? Surely may be. The intent is that you would end up being assigned more responsibilities or promoted. Maybe you do a different job entirely. And it takes networking, and it takes research, and it takes putting yourself out there and telling folks what you're good at and what you can do, and maybe some of the skills that have not been ones that you've been able to utilize, but things that you're really good at. So sometimes career advancement is the key for us, and sometimes it's the key for people with whom we're working too. I found when I did the research for this presentation initially, these statistics in some cases were pretty surprising to me. But then I got to thinking about kind of the jobs that I'd had and the way that it had gone to me, and it made sense that these statistics are probably pretty accurate. So only 37% of companies in the U.S. help employees understand how they can shape their careers. Think back to the last time when somebody sat you down and said, gee, Don, there's going to be this position opening up in the company, and here's what I think about it in relationship to your skills and abilities. You should apply. It doesn't always happen. It surely doesn't happen for folks on a caseload or for us. Only 44% of companies report that their employees, and I have to apologize, I can't read my whole slide on the screen, so I've got to relate back to the ones that I printed out. Hang on just a second. There we go. Only 44% of companies report that their employees are actually able to obtain career advancement opportunities that they desire. Some companies, they just don't exist. The kinds of things that a person might want to do just may not exist where they're at, and in that case, they do have to go outside. Sometimes they do. Only researching and asking is going to give you the answer as far as whether they do. Only a third of companies that partook in the survey reported defining vertical career paths for their employees. Every once in a while, you hear about a company that makes clear to everyone, if you want to be promoted, here's the path to do it. Here are the opportunities for you. Here are things you can do to advance. Here are training opportunities you can access, or whatever it might be. But obviously, it's saying only 1/3, so the greater majorities don't do that. Once again, asking and research. While 67% of the companies surveyed reported using technology for employee training and development purposes, only 44% of those same companies stated that they use such technology effectively. This one's a challenge for a lot of folks. The HCA recently moved from Skype to Teams, moving from GoToWebinar to Zoom, moved to Office 365, and we're huge. Our agency is huge as far as numbers of employees. The task of training all of us, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of having to do that, because I can say that a lot of us don't feel as well trained as we might be, and yet are kind of muddling through how to use all the new technologies and make it work. It's a challenge for any of us. It's a huge challenge for people that we serve who maybe didn't ever have the opportunity to really connect with technology growing up because they didn't have computers or cell phones or things like that. So please always keep in the back of your mind that that's something important to help them navigate through. And I know you do that. I do know you do that. I know in some cases more could be done. A mere 25% of survey respondents said that their managers effectively provide career advancement to their employees. I believe that to be the truth. I think we get so stuck in the day-to-day rut of, what's your caseload size? What's your direct service standard? Are you getting out and meeting with people and billing as much as you could? Yada, yada, yada. We have a new policy coming up, and have you read it? I mean, I think we get so stuck in all of those kinds of things that perhaps we don't get to those conversations about career advancement. Bring it up. Be your own advocate. Be the advocate on behalf of the folks on your caseload. So what does all of that mean? Employees are also responsible for vocalizing what they want to learn and achieve and actively pursuing. We all hope with the folks on our caseload that we are going to work our way out of a job. By that, I mean each and every person that we work with will become more independent. I used to say people became independent. We don't. We're all interdependent. There is no such thing as independence per se, unless maybe you're a hermit on top of a mountaintop somewhere and never interact with someone else. We are all interdependent. And so the idea is that the folks on our caseloads will gain the skills to do some of the things they need to do on their own that we're helping them with now. Encourage them to be their own advocate. Teach them how to be their own advocate. There are occasions that even, I think any of us need prompting or some mentoring in order to effectively be our own advocate. So keep that in mind as well. So the many faces of career advancement, and this comes from Labor and Industries. Why do people want to advance your career? Sometimes it's not so much advanced, it's lateral. It's just the boredom and the need to do something different. I can tell you, working for 21 years at one agency, the only reason I remained there as long as I did is that every couple, 3 years, we'd get a new grant or a new project or a new whatever and supported employment. So I had something new and challenging to work on at that time. The BEST grant being one of those. Prior to that, we didn't do IPS. With BEST, we did do IPS. And so it was learning and teaching and implementing policies and making the changes we needed to change, which for me at least was exciting. That was part of what made the job worthwhile. Enrichment, the opportunity to learn more, to grow, and to work with new people, and enrichment can just mean a variety of things. Advancement usually means more responsibilities, but hopefully it also means more money. Exploratory option for those folks that don't know what they want to be when they grow up, and I know there's lots and lots and lots of folks like that. The chance to explore something new and try on something different is huge. Realignment, kind of meaning that maybe the job that you had at one point in time no longer seems to be a good fit. Now you need to work into something that is a fit again. And then relocation. Talked about that before, that sometimes we have spouses that get a new job, or maybe we want to get our kids into a better school district, or maybe you want to be closer to adult kids. I mean, those are kinds of things that happen to us and to the people on our caseloads. So I liked this decision-making checklist, and I'll go back to Rodnish's question about, are you going to get the PowerPoint? This is embedded in the PowerPoint, but there's no reason why you couldn't pull it out of it too, in order to help a person make some decisions about career advancement or getting a new job or whatever it might be. So it gives you the question, potential solutions, and then your opportunity to write down your own answers and things you've been doing to further your career. If you look at the list, it makes sense. How can I find out about career opportunities within my current employer? As each of you know, and some of you may be working for a small enough agency, it's open your ears and you'll hear. But for those of us that work in larger agencies, how do you know when there's a career opportunity that might be of interest to you? Who do you talk to? Do you have an HR manager you can talk to, or a director, or coworkers, or who? Time frame. If you're researching all the time and if you're looking all the time for new opportunities for folks, hopefully you're seeing those time frames and get to things within the time frame that it would take in order to apply. What jobs are available that match your career interests? Once again, if folks are not certain, WorkSource and Career One Stop have a lot of great opportunities to do some research or some self-assessments or things along that line. Is training available? Is tuition reimbursable by your company? In times of an employer's market, excuse me, where there are lots and lots of people out of work and unemployment is high, those things typically go away. Tuition reimbursement and things along that line go away. In times of lower unemployment, when agencies have to entice people to come and apply to them, they come back again. I know the HCA has a tuition reimbursement program. That sounds like it's actually fairly liberal. I know the agency that I worked for once upon a time had a tuition reimbursement program that was fairly liberal, and they had to do away with it, sadly, at one point. Next steps, what do I need to do now? Anytime we have a goal, hopefully we've identified the steps we need to take in order to work towards it. I know that we have, for the people that we serve, we have treatment plans, rehabilitation plans, support plans, person-centered plans, employment plans. I mean, I think every agency has to have that kind of thing. Are those goals individualized? Are they small enough that a person can attain them? Are they realistic? All the SMART goal kinds of things that we're all supposed to consider. And I know we get busy and sometimes we don't. And I can say that in doing fidelity reviews, the number of service plans that I see, that the objectives are the same for everybody, meaning not individualized. And are they that helpful then? Or are you kind of floating around in a boat without a rudder? Do you really know the direction you're heading if you don't have some individualized and specific things that you've outlined to do? We can do those same kinds of goals for ourselves. Just going to look to see how I'm doing time-wise. Cruising right along. So what if you decide, or what if the person decides that they want to stay where they're at, that they don't necessarily want to move on for a variety of reasons? What then? I don't know about any of you, but I believe there was one time in my lifetime that I actually asked for a salary increase. A lot of agencies, when you work for them, they have salary bands, and you're going to be put in whatever salary band is appropriate for the job that you're doing. Some of the smaller agencies and companies, you can still request a salary increase, and they're not as banded, they're not as methodical about how they pay each job position. And so requesting a salary increase is one of the things that we can do. Requesting a salary increase is one of the things that we can help people on our caseloads to do. And it takes telling the employer what you're doing for them that makes you worth being paid more. That seems to be a no-brainer, and yet it's hard, kind of when we're in it, to figure out what those things might be. What am I excelling at? Why do you want to keep me on? Why do you want to pay me more? For people on our caseload, it takes really getting to know what their job might be and what it is that they're doing that makes a difference. Asking for a promotion or change of job within the agency is certainly something that a person can do if they love their employer, but they don't necessarily love their job. And if their employer loves them, they're potentially willing to look at, can I put you in something else that's a better fit? That would benefit the person and the employer as well. Building social capital goes back to, at least to some degree, that finding a mentor, getting to know them and them getting to know you. A mentor is typically somebody that has greater skill levels than you do, and they are ideal for recommending that you get a change of career or promotion, whatever. Building that social capital can also be if you're in a job and they have a sunshine committee and they figure out what fun activities and uplifting activities that the employees can do. Join the sunshine committee. Be part of the Cancer Relay for Life if your agency does that. Be part of the bowling team if you're, I don't know if those even exist anymore. Bowling teams and bowling leagues with COVID, I'm afraid they may be a thing of the past. I'm not sure. Honestly, I was on one a couple of different times with a couple of employers, and it brought a whole new level of getting to know my coworkers and enhancing our relationships was an amazing thing. Laugh if you'd like. It was a good thing. Exploring options outside the current job and agency. Failing, I want to stay here and there's options for me. Obviously, looking outside is something you can do. So defining a little more, building social capital. Have you ever asked your boss to take on a task that maybe wasn't yours, but because you wanted to learn? How impressive is that? Obviously, if you're proving your worth, that makes a huge difference to the employer. If they know that they've got a problem coming up and you might be the solution to that, it's pretty huge for a supervisor to be able to know that they're comfortable that something's going to be addressed that maybe they don't have time for. I think a lot of us I think I may at times complain about problems and not come with a solution, also prepared in my mind. Once again, when you look at an employer, when you look at the people we serve and the jobs that they do and the problems they run into, even things like accommodations, if you come with your own solution, you've saved that supervisor some work. As long as it's a viable solution, as long as it's a viable accommodation, you've saved that employer some work and headache and heartache. So when you identify a problem, think about what the solution to that might be. Think about how you might be involved in that solution. Is a great way of building social capital. Check the in-house job listings for higher level positions. Make sure you qualify for them before you apply. That certainly can be building social capital too. If your supervisor knows that you have additional skills that you want to use and they are truly a mentor to you, they'll support that. Offer to help out others. I'm going to tattle on Darren a little bit. We're coming up to the topical employment webinar, and it takes a fair amount of doing to identify people that have interesting topics that they would want to present, getting them lined up to present, getting the time scheduled and the platform and the. And when one of them falls through, it's nerve-wracking because what do you do then? And I said, why don't we just cover it? We've done that a couple of times now. And I know yesterday he said that I was saving his bacon. Well, I wasn't. It's a team thing. I was saving our bacon. And if you think about the kind of scenarios where things fall through and then what, if you're one of the ones that offers to help and get things back on track, you are valuable. Same thing with the folks on our caseload, obviously. If things go south and they offer to be part of the solution, they are seen as a problem solver and somebody that an employer would want to keep around. Building social capital, ask someone with more experience for advice. Listen to their pointers. Consider making the changes they recommend, because there's nothing more validating if you've made a suggestion than to see that the person takes it and runs with it. So if you're truly, and if people we're serving are truly trying to build that social capital and they ask for suggestions, make sure that they at least consider using the suggestions and don't just blow them off. A person is going to be far less likely to offer recommendations to you if you've blown them off in the past. Find out what additional training and certifications can help you advance. I am not certain how statewide it has been. I know the Moses Lake WorkSource had free computer classes. And when things switched to more virtual, they switched some of them to more virtual. That doesn't mean the person that we're serving can automatically access them. But if we can help them to figure out how to get into some of the computer classes and do some of those things on their own time, the people we serve, hopefully if they're not too depressed or anxious and just really, kind of frozen in place, but they should be spending some of their own time doing some of the things that are going to enhance their skills. So always be looking for, are there free trainings? Are there programs? Are there computer trainings? Are there whatever it might be that they can access and improve their skills in their own time? Have you guys heard the saying before that idle hands are the devil's workshop? And I don't know if you've heard, it's an old saying, and I'm old, so that's probably the reason why I know it. But what it essentially means is if you've got too much time on your hands, things tend to go south. I know with people that we serve, too much time on your hands means you ruminate, and you may maybe blow out of proportion things that are going on in your life and how bad they are. Or certainly you end up feeling worse just because you are spending all your time thinking on them. So helping people to find maybe free training programs or things that they can do with their time, independent of time with us, fills up time with more pro-social, more positive, more forward-thinking kinds of things, and helps them to reduce their symptoms of whatever it might be. Typically the more that you're doing in your life that's positive and focused, the less you're doing in your life that's negative and not focused. So I think that just kind of sort of a math thing. They always said we'd use math. I always thought they were lying, but it's sort of a math thing. If you got a void, you fill it in with something else. So I mentioned earlier, and I'll say again, that when anyone is doing job search, it's not an uplifting experience. You feel rejected to some degree because you go to interviews and you think I did my best and my best wasn't good enough. Well, it wasn't maybe for that job. That doesn't mean that there isn't a job out there for everyone, because I truly believe the people on our caseloads, us, whomever, I think there is a right job fit for everyone. Sometimes related to the folks on our caseload, it's because we've done customized employment or job carving. Maybe they do a piece of a job and that's the right fit for them. I'm going to share an example that somebody at one of the agencies shared with me that I thought was just so perfect. And if she's out in the audience, hopefully it makes her smile that I was so impressed with her example that I used again. But she had a gentleman on her caseload who she'd helped to get a job bussing tables. And he would consistently take all the ketchups and put on one, all the salts and put on another table, all the peppers and put on a third. Finally got fired. Got a carve job. She carved a job for him at Nike, where he would go to a great big box of mismatched shoes and find the mates for each of them. How perfect is that? That was his good job match. And so it was one of those kinds of things that in his case, that not having a good job match, not having something that was right for him led to the finding something better. How does that relate to the self-care? The more we like our job, the better we feel. The more we like our job, the more likely we are to have the energy to do things outside of work in order to do self-care. The better match the job is, the more likely we are to just be satisfied with life in general. Maybe some folks think that's putting too much importance on employment, but I think it really is that employment, or that important, I should say. So self-care. How you treat yourself is how you're inviting the world to treat you, and I really believe that. One of the grants that we had when I was working at the agency that I worked for was called Project Search, and it was working with transitioning students at the high school to help them in internships and then ultimately to help them get a job. And I don't know how many times that I heard The students call themselves dummy, or call their classmates dummy. And we spent full class sessions talking about valuing themselves and valuing each other. And though they were in special ed, that didn't mean that they didn't have, and maybe academics weren't their strength. They had lots of strengths. And if they called each other dummy, they gave all the other students the right to call them dummy too. We talked a lot about that kind of thing. Value yourself. Encourage the people on your caseload to value themselves. Encourage them to talk well about themselves and not put themselves down. And this is a do as I say, not as I do. I know on occasion I'll say, "Oh my God, that was stupid," and I try and stop myself from doing that. One of the things that I taught people on my caseload was kind of a thought-stopping thing. And no, I didn't have to be a therapist in order to do that. But I'd encourage them. Is there a name you call yourself? Do you call yourself dummy or stupid or, pardon me, dumbass or things along that line? Because that was one of the favorite ones that I always heard. I call myself, yada, yada. And I said, when you hear yourself, call yourself that. Say stop. Actually say stop. Or in your head, think stop. And reframe it. So for a long, long time, I would ruminate on stuff when I made a mistake, and I'd call myself stupid. That was so stupid. I can't believe how stupid you were. That was really stupid. When in my head I heard stupid, I would say stop. Actually, I'm intelligent and typically a good problem solver. And a lot of the time, I don't make mistakes. Every once in a while, I do. And doing that over a period of time, I was actually able to change my thought process. And I've taught that to lots of folks that have said that they were able to change their process too. So part of self-care is how you think about yourself. Part of self-care is what you do to take care of yourself. It's those tapes in your head and changing those if you need to. And it's definitely the relaxing and that kind of thing that needs to happen. So what do you do for self-care? I have a list here of some things. I know folks would say gardening is definitely not self-care. In my case, it is. I take out any frustration that I've had over a period of time in pulling weeds, and there's a great deal of satisfaction that goes along with clearing out the garden and making it look beautiful. And I can tell you, as I'm working gardening in my front yard, every time I do, I have people walking by that'll stop and say, "Oh, how pretty are your flowers. I love walking by your house," and this and that. So I get to interact with folks. And so for me, gardening is great self-care. I have the daughter of a good friend that's now teaching yoga in an O2 yoga studio. And she has gone from being kind of shy to really kind of self-aware and I've lost the word. I can't come up with it, but I've just seen a huge transition in her. I see. You're welcome, Radnisha. I think self-care is huge, and I don't think any of us do enough of it. I know I don't. And I know when I don't, I know what I portray as. And I know if I'm looking for a job, if I'm not doing self-care, they can see that I look downtrodden and maybe depressed and not as positive as I could be, and not as self-confident. That's the word that I was looking for. When you do good self-care, your self-confidence shows. And I think that's what we want from people that we serve. So do you do exercise? Proven to be a way to manage depression and anxiety. Exercise will help with the symptoms of both of those. Do you do activities with friends and family where you can interact and talk and share your dreams and get some feedback? I'm one of those folks that had somebody tell me one time I was an extroverted introvert. and I kind of went, huh? And they said, are you able to do presentations and talk to people and be kind of outgoing, but then at the end of the day, you have to have your alone time to charge your batteries? And I said, oh yeah, in a big way. And some of us are like that. Some of us get into, overload when it comes to too much activity going on, and we need that time for ourselves. Forgive yourself for your mistakes. Definitely the thought stopping is a big piece of that. getting to a point where you recognize that you're beating yourself up and ceasing to do that. We should talk to ourselves as nicely as we talk to other folks, and I can guarantee that we do not. I can guarantee that stuff that I've said to myself, I would never say to another person. I wouldn't drag them down that way. And I think we're all guilty of that. Have a good laugh. My colleagues and I value the fact that when we have meetings, we spend a few minutes with just kind of silly stuff and to get the chance to laugh, and it makes a big difference. Surround yourself with uplifting and positive people. I think all of us have probably gone through times where maybe we're hanging out with folks that drag us down as opposed to build us up. And it's hard sometimes to cut off those ties. Also, so very important potentially to do so. Breathe. I'm laughing only because, and this is another, story that kind of portrays the importance, but also the fact that it's a skill that you practice over time. I do deep breathing when I'm anxious, and I'm anxious quite a lot. And I've done deep breathing over a period of years. And when I went to my allergist, he had me blow in this little machine to measure my output. And he said, "Wow, were you a cross-country runner?" I said, "No." He said, "Did you do were you swim team? Did a lot of underwater swimming?" "No." He said, "Well, that's really excellent. That's very high output." And I said, "I'm anxious and I do a lot of deep breathing." And I have to say he laughed too. The breathing can make a big difference, and it does for me. The paying attention to tense muscles and relaxing those muscles and doing that when you're not tense so that you recognize when you are tense, oh wow, my neck is really tight. I need to do something about that. Those are all important things. And activating whatever is your self-soothing system, if you know what that is. Kind of pay attention to the things that you do for yourself that make a difference and cause those tense muscles to relax is important. And teaching that to the folks that we serve is important, because I can guarantee that's maybe not something that anybody's ever discussed with them. So, and this is early. Those are all of the things that I had to say about career advancement and kind of the self-care piece that you got to do to maintain, kind of that positive self-confidence to be able to do that successfully. Some of the tips and tricks and techniques. I hope I've met the objectives of what I trained today. I would ask if there are any questions. And if you do have, I can either unmute you or I can, see them in the chat box if you want to ask them that way. I'm going to put in a couple of plugs for things while you're thinking about questions that you might want to ask. One is that we just got approved for contract or for pot of funding to do fidelity reviews for the next contracting cycle, which starts in July. So if there are those of you that work for agencies that want to either host a supported employment fidelity review, or you want to be a fidelity reviewer, or you've had a fidelity review and you want to follow up, now's the time to start contacting me or Darren in order to say you have an interest in doing that after July. And we're going to start working on doing outreach, for that contracting process. I know the supportive housing team is doing the same. So just be aware that those contracted opportunities are coming up, which means your agency gets paid for their participation. I mentioned that the tablets and phones are going to be coming out at some point in time. I certain somewhere along the way I've seen that there may be a date for that, and I apologize for not knowing what that date is. But just be aware the accountable communities of health are going to be the ones that will distribute those, and they'll be coming from the HCA to them and then distributed to agencies. So just be aware and be watching so that you can put in your request as soon as possible. Trying to think of other announcements I might want to make at this point in time. We do have our monthly topical employment webinars. Obviously, for the last couple of them, we've had some challenges with people having to cancel. Real life happens, we know that, and obviously we try and fill in as best we may in order to make up for the fact that the person has had to cancel. I hope, even though the topic was different, that you all ended up getting something out of the training today. I always consider a training a success, either whether I'm presenting or if I've gone to one. If I come up with one takeaway from it that's something that I may use, I consider it a success. We will be sending out the slides and the recording of this webinar. One of the changes that's happening with us going from GoToWebinar to Zoom is that we can't access the recording quite as quickly or easily as we did before. So it might take a little while on the recording, but we will be sending that out as well. And I know both Darren and I are available virtually to do individualized training for agencies. So if you're in an agency and you feel like you need some training, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to get you connected with either, a recording of something we've done in the past, or just to individualize the training to be provided to you. So do always feel free to reach out to us. Something I ran into yesterday doing a fidelity review is a person brought up an individual on their caseload with whom there were challenges getting their needs met. And so Darren and I are also, we've both been in the field for a long time. We have a lot of knowledge about resources. If we don't have, we know other people that have the knowledge about resources. Always feel free to reach out to us if you have a resource question too. I don't see any additional questions at this point in time or hands raised, anything like that. Thank you so very much for putting up with me today. Like I say, I hope you ended up coming away with something that was positive or something that you'll be able to use. Watch for the PowerPoint and recording to come out. And I'm going to give you back, it looks like about 27 minutes of your day today so that you have that time to do something else. I hope you take care, do good self-care, and I hope to get to talk to you again at some point in time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Don, and thank you for all the participants today. Great resources for some new funding that's coming up. So definitely hope some of you folks take that information back to your agencies and consider some of the incentives we have for the IPS fidelity reviews coming up. It's good to hear that we can continue our learning collaborative development for another funding cycle.
All right, and with that, I'm going to end the session.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.